The mansion's golden gates hadn't opened in 15 years, until he returned. The billionaire everyone thought had forgotten his past. But what waited inside wasn't the welcome he expected. It was her. "Maria?" he whispered, frozen. The black maid who once cleaned his floors now held his twins, two children who looked unmistakably like him. Her voice trembled. "You left, and they called me a liar." What happened next would uncover lies buried beneath wealth, power, and skin color, a truth cruel enough to shatter everything he believed about himself. Because sometimes the cruelest secrets are born from silence. Maria Johnson had spent 15 years inside the billionaire's mansion, not as a guest, but as the woman who made sure it sparkled. Every morning before sunrise, she'd tie her grey uniform, tuck her curls under a scarf, and whisper to herself, "Just another day. Maria, keep your head down." The house was her world, its marble floors, its gold chandeliers, and the quiet rooms where people like her were supposed to stay invisible. She'd seen parties where guests laughed too loud, glasses clinked too high, and men in tuxedos talked about charity while ignoring the workers who served them. But Maria never complained. Not when the head butler scolded her for stepping on the main staircase. Not when the lady of the house, Mrs. Whitmore, called her girl, even though Maria was 34. She stayed because she needed the job. And because of them, two small faces who waited for her every night in the servant quarters. "Mommy, will Daddy ever come back?" little Liam asked once, tracing shapes on her palm. Maria's heart tightened. "Some doors, baby, don't open twice," she whispered. Years passed quietly after the billionaire left abroad. Rumors said he'd never return, until one cold autumn morning, the mansion buzzed again. Cars rolled in, guards returned, and whispers filled the halls. "He's back," someone murmured. "Mr. Whitmore's finally home." Maria froze, the broom still in her hand. The man who'd promised her love in shadows. The one who'd vanished before his twins were born. She told herself she could avoid him, that her world wouldn't crumble. But deep down, she knew, when the powerful return, the past never stays buried for long. Because in that house, secrets didn't die. They waited. Maria tried to keep her head down, just like she always had. The day Mr. Whitmore returned, the mansion changed overnight. The air was heavier, the workers quieter. Everyone wanted to impress him, everyone except Maria, who just wanted to disappear. But fate had other plans. The first time he saw her again was by accident. She was polishing the railing when his voice broke the silence. "Maria?" Her hands froze. That voice, low, familiar, almost guilty. She turned slowly. He looked older, his hair streaked with grey, but those sharp blue eyes hadn't changed. "I didn't know you still worked here," he said softly. Maria forced a tight smile. "People like me don't leave places like this, sir." He flinched at "sir." For a moment, he looked like he might say more, but Mrs. Whitmore appeared behind him, her perfume thick and cold. "Oh, she's still here," Mrs. Whitmore sneered. "I thought we replaced all the staff." Maria lowered her gaze. "I just came to finish cleaning, ma'am." "Then clean quietly." That night, Maria overheard them arguing. "You never told me she still worked here," the wife hissed. "Why would it matter?" he snapped. "Because she doesn't belong in this house anymore. She never did." Maria clutched the twins' small hands tighter that night. They didn't know the truth, not yet. To the rest of the mansion, they were just the help's kids. But every time she looked into their faces, his eyes, his jawline, she knew the lie couldn't last forever. The next morning it started. The whispers, the looks. One of the guards told her quietly, "Mom wants you gone." "I have nowhere to go," she whispered back. He shrugged. "Then pray he defends you." But when she approached Mr. Whitmore, his tone was colder than she remembered. "You should have left years ago, Maria. Things are complicated now." Her voice cracked. "Complicated? I raised your children alone, and now I'm a problem to be removed." He looked around nervously. "Keep your voice down. People will hear." That sentence hit harder than any insult could. People will hear. That's what frightened him. Not her pain, not the years of silence, but the truth escaping his perfect world. 2 days later, Mrs. Whitmore confronted her in the kitchen. "I know what you're trying to do," she spat. Maria frowned. Trying to survive? No, trying to humiliate my family. You think anyone will believe your word against ours? Maria's throat tightened. Ma'am, I'm not here for trouble. Mrs. Whitmore leaned closer. You already are the trouble. That night, Maria returned to the servant quarters. The twins were gone. Panic shot through her body. She ran through the halls, screaming their names. Liam, Lila. Guards blocked her path. You can't go upstairs, one barked. They're my children. Not anymore. Tears blurred her vision. She heard a familiar voice behind her. Maria, stop! It was him. Where are my kids? She cried, trembling. He hesitated. They're safe. With my wife. Just calm down. Safe, she shouted. You mean hidden? You think taking them erases what you did? His silence was her answer. She dropped to her knees, her sobs echoing through the marble halls. Every worker who had once pitied her turned away, because in that mansion no one dared to challenge power, especially not for a black maid's truth. And as the night deepened, Maria realized she wasn't just fighting for her children. She was fighting to be seen, but she didn't know yet. The cruelest part of the truth was still coming. The mansion erupted in chaos the next morning. Shouts echoed through the marble halls. Maria burst into the grand foyer, her breath sharp, her eyes wild. 2 guards held her children at the top of the staircase, Liam crying, Lila clutching his arm. Let them go! Maria screamed. Mrs. Whitmore stood beside her husband, calm and cruel. You brought this on yourself, she said coldly. You thought you could stain this family's name and get away with it? Maria's voice shook. Those are your husband's children. Your twins! Gasps rippled through the staff. The truth had finally escaped the shadows. Mr. Whitmore stepped forward, his face pale. Maria, please, don't do this here. She stared at him, trembling. Here? You mean in front of people who finally see what I've lived with? You hid behind money while I raised your blood in silence. Mrs. Whitmore's face twisted with rage. Get her out! The guards advanced, but Maria didn't move. You can throw me out, she said, tears streaking her face, but they'll grow up knowing the color of my skin didn't make me less of their mother. The shame isn't mine, it's yours. The billionaire's voice cracked. Maria, save it, she cut him off. You had years to choose truth over comfort. You chose silence. Liam reached out, sobbing. Mommy! That sound shattered something inside him. For the first time, Mr. Whitmore turned on his wife. Enough! They're my children. Mrs. Whitmore's eyes went wide. You're destroying everything. He whispered, it was already destroyed the moment we let her suffer alone. But before Maria could reach her children, a guard grabbed her from behind. She struggled, screaming their names as they were dragged out of sight. The foyer fell silent, the echoes of her cries bouncing off the marble. Mr. Whitmore stood frozen, caught between the life he built and the truth he buried. For years, Maria had cleaned the mansion's floors. Now her tears washed over them instead, leaving behind a stain no amount of power could erase, because the truth was out, and the cost of silence had finally come due. Days later, the mansion was quiet again, but nothing inside it was the same. The help whispered. The guards avoided eye contact, and for the first time, the great Whitmore family name was spoken with shame. Maria sat on a bench outside the gates, clutching her twins close. Their small hands wrapped around hers, trembling but safe. The bruises on her arms hadn't faded, but neither had her spirit. Mr. Whitmore found her there, his suit wrinkled, eyes hollow. I told them the truth, he said softly. Everything. Maria didn't look at him. And did the truth fix what you broke? He lowered his gaze. No, but maybe it's a start. Maria stood, her voice steady. A start would have been standing beside me when the world called me a liar. A start would have been choosing what's right before it became convenient. He had no answer. The silence between them said more than words ever could. As Maria walked away from the mansion, the autumn wind caught her scarf, carrying it like a banner of quiet defiance. She wasn't just leaving a job. She was walking out of the shadow of someone else's power. For the first time, she wasn't invisible. She was free. In the weeks that followed, word spread. The story of the Maid and the Billionaire's twins became a headline, a conversation, a mirror held up to the world. Some called it scandal, others called it truth. Because Maria's fight wasn't just her own. It was the story of every woman who had ever been silenced, every worker whose worth was dismissed because of the color of their skin. She lost her home that day, but she gained something far greater, her voice. And maybe that's where real change begins, not in the silence of marble halls, but in the courage of those who refuse to stay quiet. So the question remains, how many more Marias will have to scream before the world finally decides to listen? If her truth shook you, don't let it fade in silence. Like, comment, and subscribe, because some stories deserve to be seen.